All right, let's bring in CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader, Tom Mulcair. Tom, nice to see you again.
Good to be with you, Carolyn.
What do you make about this discussion of a revived Keystone XL? Could that really be a thing?
No,
Yeah.
and it's a very good thing that it doesn't come about. I guess it's the type of chip you can throw on the table when you're looking to, raise the bets. You're dealing with an old scoundrel in Donald Trump. You're also dealing with Howard Lutnick, who out of nowhere just blurts out, well, Canada can't do better than the United States on auto. We've had a deal with the Americans going all the way back to the Auto Pact of the mid-1960s. That's how long we've been at this together. We understand that the American companies like making cars up here because we're paid in Canadian dollars. We're a lot less trouble than some of the American unions. And not only that, the bottom line is it's cheaper for American consumers. Once those consumers start to understand what the tariffs on aluminum, steel, and yes, automobiles mean for them, and that it means huge inflation, $7,000 or $8,000 more for a pickup truck, $100,000 more for a house, because all the lumber going into the house is being tariffed at 45% by Donald Trump. Trump has gotten away with an unbelievable con job here, and I guess it's because he's very good at it. He's been doing it his whole life. He's convinced Americans that somehow all this money is just dropping into the U.S. Treasury, but it's not being paid by Canada and not being paid by Canadian companies. It's been being paid by American consumers in increased prices. And again, it's been a clever job to hide that so far, but the figures on inflation are starting to show an increase, and it will be something that will hit hard the average American household and the average American worker.
Okay, but Tom, from those talks yesterday, we heard three things over and over: steel, aluminum, energy. Steel, aluminum, energy. And so it really makes it sound like if you want to do away with these two things, steel and aluminum, we've got to make a deal on energy. And whether it's Keystone or something else, it sounds like there's got to be some sort of a concession from Canada to get those tariffs relieved. What do you make of that?
Yeah, but the problem is, Carolyn, we're not blocking anything on energy. The Americans blocked Keystone several times. There were protests there. We're not the ones who rolled that thing back. And by the way, from our point of view, it's a really lousy proposition. We'd be, again, pumping raw natural resources to be processed in the United States. Those value-added jobs are what's interesting about those natural resources. Those jobs would be added on the Gulf Coast in Texas. And we're looking at Europe right now dying. They'd love to have access to Canadian petroleum, Canadian liquefied natural gas. We've got nothing on the East Coast. The Conservatives are working with Danielle Smith to get a second line out to the West Coast, whereas the one that they've got there just cost Canadian taxpayers $35 billion. Where's the logic in any of this? I have to say that on that energy question, I've yet to see anything from Mr. Carney's government that convinces me that they get this stuff. But they got rid of a carbon tax. They're hurting the environment, and there's nothing there for Canadian society as a whole.
But don't you think that's a fool's errand to try to find logic in negotiating with this current Trump administration?
Great point. Yes, I think that's fair, but that's what's required anyway. We can't unmake the election of Donald Trump. We've got to deal with it. And once we acknowledge the fact that he's there and he's what we have to deal with, then we sit down and we start trying to make it work. What I found fascinating yesterday, Carolyn, was that I remember Carney saying something that stayed with me. He said, it's better no deal than a bad deal. And I think we saw that yesterday because Trump was trying to oversell, as usual, saying, oh, the Canadians are going to be really happy with what they get from us today. Yeah, sure, as if Donald Trump is in the business of making other world leaders happy. Then they had a private meeting, and then radio silence, 4 p.m., Dominic Lemelin in front of the cameras at the Canadian embassy with the Capitol behind him saying, no deal. And they kept saying, but Trump said we were going to be happy, no deal. We're going to continue the conversation. He never even said negotiations. We're going to keep talking. We're going to continue the conversation. I think that clearly something happened during those two events. Trump thought he had us. Carney said no and walked away. Now, talking about the images, it is like shooting fish in a barrel for Pierre Poilievre to stand up and take shots at Carney. And Carney's just got no choice but to take it after what just happened in Washington. My sense of it is, though, Carolyn, is that there is a deal in the works and that Carney will come out looking a lot better than he does today because no question about it, he didn't look very good coming back to Ottawa today with nothing to show.
For the record, Tom, LeBlanc did say, I am very happy. We don't know what he might have been happy about. We are now saying a few weeks for this deal to be hammered out, so we'll be watching for that, and for sure we'll be calling you back for further insight. Thanks, Tom.
All the best.
CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair.